Now, so that's something that the sheep has to overcome. First, become aware that they've been turned into a sheep, that though they have lust and greed for money, for a estate, for a house, for a job, they don't have the resources. That in itself creates a good amount of anger and resentment. Then you have the oppressors. If being oppressed creates habits, being the oppressor also creates habits. It's not enough to sit someone down and say, listen, can you just not be as mean? Well, if you've been exercising meanness for the past 20 years, how the hell do you overcome it? It's like you have to go through AA, but AA for just being mean, And if going through AA and recovering from your alcoholism takes you about 5 to 10 or 15, 20 years, and there's a 12-step program, well, damn. When you keep walking on other people's skull, assalamu alaikum, there has to come a point where you say, I'm tired of this. Or maybe at a certain point, the oppressed need to become the oppressor. And it's something that George Orwell talked to us about. I think it was called, what was it called? The Farm, Animal Farm. The sheep eventually eat the lion, and then they eventually grow fangs and become lion themselves. So that's about history. And there are lots of emotions we haven't even really talked about, and there is no reason to talk about them. My only, I suppose, last few comments in regards to that particular question is the following. It is good to be oppressed by healthy people. It is good to be oppressed by parents who are both musicians and have come to realize that life sometimes is far too difficult and complex, and the only way you can release your toxic emotions is by playing the guitar, or at least liking music enough so you can go to a concert, sit back, and get a cultural musical release. Okay? If your parents have trained you and trained your ears and trained your intellect and emotions that just in case life becomes tough, go listen to some good music. And just in case you enjoy Lil Wayne, Eminem, and your parents pounce on you on a daily basis, it's good to be oppressed like that. Because your parents are refining your interior. They're refining the way you listen to music, the way you digest music, the way you process music. Okay? Now, if I was to ask you, would you like to be oppressed by Hitler or Mahatma Gandhi? Sure, history plays tricks about people's character, fine. But let's just say history is somewhat accurate about the depiction it has given us of Hitler and Gandhi. Hitler is mean and violent, and Gandhi is compassionate and forgiving. Let's just say that. If I was to ask you, would you like to be Hitler or would you like to be Gandhi? Remember, both have been oppressed. But someone expresses Gandhi expresses his oppression in a very eloquent way, whereas Hitler doesn't. Okay? And that has its own psychological history and issues. We won't get into it. No doubt most of you would say, well, damn, I would like to be oppressed by Gandhi. I'd like to go to his house, but when I go to his house, I can't just sit anywhere I want. I can't just ask for anything. I will wait and wait and wait until his wife offers me tea with milk. If there is no sugar, I won't ask for sugar because that's not the etiquette. Okay? And just in case you have a big mouth and you think that your ideas mean something and they're evolved and mature, at the moment you sit next to Mahatma Gandhi, you realize it's best to keep your mouth shut, even though you're about to explode. Okay? But you keep yourself intact. Now that is a good way to be oppressed. Eventually, when you're oppressed by Gandhi or Mozart, or a teacher who's going to teach you a good craft, a craft that will help you in a positive way, it's good to be oppressed by those people. Our good friend Josh here asked a question yesterday. What happens when you follow or you fall in love with a teacher who's crummy, who is deceptive, who is cunning, who's like a fox? There are people who write letters to those who are serving time in prison. It starts casually. I'm married, I have 5 kids, I have some extra time on my hand. I know that prison can be a lonely place because my brother was in it. I'm just writing you just to say hello, just to chit-chat. And so the writing continues day after day after day, and all of a sudden you have emotions. And then you realize that this person who's been in prison for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, have read enough books, now begins to think. And you know how marriages or relationships are. After a while, they become routine, and the liveliness that once existed in them now disappear. It's just life, and it's stable, it's good. It may not have much passion in it, but it anchors you, you know. It's not like you go home and your parents jump in joy when you go there and they talk to you about wonderful things. No, just say, hey son, go into your room and shut your mouth. And the fact that they're there, hello, that creates a good amount of comfort for you. And after some time, you realize that this woman who's been writing falls in love. And the sort of genre that had to do with wisdom, insights about life, all of a sudden turns into one of romanticism. And then, lo and behold, one day she looks at her husband or his wife or her wife or her husband and says, honey, I'm going to go visit Joe Schmo, San Quentin. What? Yeah, why? No, your companion doesn't know, but you've fallen madly in love with him. Now, and maybe the guy has been completely rehabbed in prison. I don't know. But let's be a cynic and say no. You know, he just has bumper sticker things to talk about, but deep down, nothing about him or her has changed. But what is it that happens to the person who lives in a civilized world, not the prison system? Well, love turns them into a poet. Love forces them to make sacrifices, no different than Jesus going to the desert. Love forces them to become detached. I no longer care as much for my husband, I care for this other fellow. Detachment to the extent that she or he may even be willing to leave the entire family and move to prison. I don't know if that's possible, but let's just say that the woman is very cunning, goes out there and massacres some people, ends up in San Quentin, it's just the next cell. Okay. So, the thing you need to understand, whether you fall in love with Jesus Christ or David Koresh, whether you fall in love with the space people or Malcolm X, the outcome, the result of falling in love and being in the cradle of this intense passion is that you become creative, you become a poet. The muses, the gods speak to you. You no longer connect your physical body. You now fly, you soar to the heavens. Now, what happens is the following. You leave your family, sure. You get married to this guy who served time for 20 years, and, you know, the first few months in the relationship, you have blinders on. The intensity of love, the emotions that consume you, make you blind for the most part. Goody, hello, how are you?
How are you?
I am well, thank you. It's good to see you. Now, 20 years in a solitary confinement, I don't know what sort of an animal you'll become. But because you're in love and because the other person is in love, I suppose your interior has gone into repression. You know, you become like this person who's like a sage-like, Messiah-like. But then once in a while, you kind of exhibit this rage, and your companion doesn't know what to do with it. And after a while, she or he comes to realize that nothing about you has changed, and then you realize it has been a complete mistake, you leaving your companion, leaving your children, leaving your job, sacrificing everything just to be with this other fella, only to realize it really stinks. Now you have to find a way to get out of the relationship. And depending on your companion, how violent he may be, how attached he may be, what sort of a stalker he may be, how he wants to harass you, how he wants to abuse you, that'll impact you on a variety of different levels. Let's just say he just says, fine, I don't want to be with you. And you go back to your ex, your husband, and your kids. They no longer want you either. So while you're in love with anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you become a poet. You become more than simply flesh. Time reveals the sort of love that existed inside you. Now, the Greeks have about 7 different shades of love. Maybe the sort of love that inspired you to go and fall in love with this inmate was ludus. It was lust. It wasn't philo. It wasn't storga. It was lust. Now, it doesn't matter who comes in your life and tells you, this is a lustful love, walk away. Because you're in love, your ears are closed and your eyes are blind. Nothing can penetrate. You just don't see and don't hear. And like the prodigal son, love forces you to waste a good amount of things. There comes a point where you realize you have a companion, yes, but you are lonelier than ever before. But you've lost too much, you've wasted too much, and now you go back asking your husband, ex-husband, to take you back, and he says no. Ask your kids to perhaps make peace with you, but they say no. Now, here's a trick. And I don't know if it makes sense. I don't even know if it's the right trick to apply. The more you love Satan, the more you're able to live in the desert. The more you're able to withstand brokenness. And the more intensely you love, the longer that love is going to last. You could also do the same thing with Gandhi or Jesus Christ. But the trick is to love. Now, if you happen to be intellectually honest, and that's something that none of us want to do, it's far too painful. If you don't have to be intellectually honest, it's not something that you demand of yourself, then you can love as long as you want, and you'll be kind of protected by the cunningness of whoever the teacher may be. If, on the other hand, once in a while you wake up from some slumber and you begin to reflect on things, now what you do is you cast doubts and you begin to question. And every time you have a doubt and every time you question, there is a tiny little distance that grows between you and your teacher, or you and the thing that you worship. Can I tell you, let me share with you, and as I'm getting older and closer to retirement, I'm more willing to kind of just share my own life story a little, and forgive me. I suppose I was maybe 18 or 19 when I had met Hussein, and it was a very intense, maybe 10-year period in my life. And, I come from a religious background. My parents are religious, even though my father is close to 90. He prays, he fasts, so does my mother and most of the people in my community. Now, when I met Hussein, the fasting month in the Islamic tradition is about 30 days. You know, a month out of the year you fast. The moment the sun comes up, you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't do anything, and you wait and you wait and you wait until the sun goes down. So the sun becomes this entity that's supposed to nourish you. The sun becomes symbolic for truth, it becomes symbolic for liberation, for heaven, for paradise, for honesty. And one of the nice things that fasting does for you is that to be able to think, to be able to have desires, to be able to have any pursuits, you need energy. Without food, everything falls from you. You have no need for your body because it doesn't need to go anywhere because it can't go anywhere. You don't have energy to think. And even when you gather with your friends, you realize without food, without energy, without drinking tea together, breaking bread together, there is nothing to talk about. And then you sit back and say, what the hell am I doing here? I want to go home and sleep. Okay. Now, when you have a teacher, is something we talked about in this class, or when you're in love with anything, you give them gifts. Whether they deserve it, who the hell knows? Time will reveal those things to you. I don't know if the stories are true about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, that she's very attractive, she's beautiful. But once you get to know her, on the inside, she's a beast. Okay. True or not, I have no idea. Now, when I fell in love with Hussein, he would say, okay, it's time to fast. Fine. But I wouldn't just fast for 30 days. I would fast for 50 days. And I would remove all the comforts of my room. I would trash them. I had no bed. Especially during wintertime, I would have no blanket over me. I would have a tiny sheet over me so that I would freeze, so I could wake up and engage in various exercises. Now, that is a very intense moment in my life, and it lasted for about 10 years. And if someone told me, do A, B, C, D, I said, absolutely, especially if it came from my teacher. Now, I will never go near those things. I don't care for them. And if someone was to come to my class and say, I want to fast, I said, why, are you stupid? What the hell do you want to fast for? I want to go into the cave and meditate. Are you dumb? Stay in school. I want to read books on philosophy. No, you need stats to graduate. And now when someone comes to me and says those things to me, I kind of look at them as a weirdo. Some of you in this class texted me asking for all these audio lectures, and 10 minutes later, I sent them your way, But it also comes with a cautionary note. I'm going to send you thousands of hours of lectures on social sciences by some of the great lecturers around the world. Your task is to finish school, okay, at least with a master's degree, because bachelor's doesn't mean anything anymore, Get a job, save money, buy a house, and then if you want to take these ideas seriously, then do so, And you have to also understand the culture. It's a culture where no one really cares for anyone. It's a culture where you don't have parents, nobody has money. It's kind of like the movie Wall Street. People have nothing. They have no savings, no emotional savings, no intellectual savings, no physical savings. They have nothing, And so the point I'm trying to make ultimately is, because I love the man, I would do whatever he asked me. There were some things I just couldn't do, like he would ask me to go out there and dance. He said, Hussein, I'm like a 2x4. I don't even know how to move my body. Now, here's the thing. Had I done so, had I said yes to him requesting me to go out there and dance in public and make a complete fool of myself, when I finished all of my degrees, I went to interviews. And in interviews, you know what you got to do? You got to sell yourself. But to sell yourself, you have to go out there and just reveal who and what you are. The good and the bad and the ugly. And let the committee say what it wants to say. They'll either call you back and say, you want to do a second interview, or just say, no, you're awful. Had I danced when I was 19, when he had asked me for the following 10 years, I would have shed a good amount of power that I thought other people had over me. I'm going to go there and move like a 2x4. For those of you in this class who have seen Seinfeld, Elaine, have you seen the way she dances? It's awful. I mean, it's, in some ways, it's quite beautiful because she's so quirky, and she's perhaps the only person on this planet of 8 billion people who dances like that. But she just doesn't care. And had I moved into non-caring from the age 19 to about 30, then when I would go to the interviews, I would just say whatever and do whatever and behave whatever. And I would have gotten a job much, much earlier in life. I mean, I got a job when I was 20, but that's a different story. And later on, as the intensity in the relationship kind of disappeared, I looked at Hussein and I said, this guy, what the heck is he talking about? He doesn't know what he's saying. He's not coherent. He's not logical. He doesn't know much about history. He doesn't think well. And then sometimes I go back and say, how could I have fallen in love with a man who just doesn't know what the heck he is talking about? And that's the thing. Now, the good thing about Hussein was that I lucked out. I lucked out because all the things that he asked me to do and all the things that I did because of him was ultimately to my benefit. It's something I always tell my wife. And it's always that I always tell my students. There are people in this room, and there have been plenty of them over the years. They had nothing. They become attracted to these ideas, and then they begin to swim in these ideas. And I grab them by the throat, and I say, no. You want to be in these ideas? Fine. You need a job. You need to stop being a couch surfer. Is that how you say it? Yeah? You need to have money. You need to have a car. You need to have a job. You need to have a house. Okay? And when they become accomplished, I always tell them, I'm doing all the stuff for you because someone before me did all that stuff for me. And that's how you kind of tell, the tree by the fruit or the fruit by the tree. I didn't follow Osho. And because of that, I didn't become a hippie. I didn't follow Eckhart Tolle. And so I don't go around saying anger is bad. Vengeance is bad. No, there are moments where they're actually quite good. And so you become passive for the right things, you become active for the right things. And I suppose ultimately the point I'm trying to make in regards to your question is, good teachers are like jackets or like tools. Dollar store has tools, but after one use, you can no longer use them. Okay. You can also go to, say, I don't know, Safeway, or then you can go to 7-Eleven, or then you can go to Lowe's, or then you can go to Home Depot, or you can directly go to DeWalt. And teachers really just like tools. Some tools are just bad, but they look good. Some tools are just a one-time use. Some tools, you can just use them over and over and over again until you realize, well, you no longer really need to do carpentry. Your body can't do it anymore. And it's kind of like you look at Hussein and say, yeah, I think I'm done. I think I've gotten what I needed to get. I can now go out there and kind of process things on my own. And just in case I run into difficulties, I'll go and talk to him. Now, in regards to knowing and understanding, right now I am building this tiny little house. I know I need tools. So I went to Home Depot and I bought $20,000 worth of tools. I'm just joking, but okay. I know how to cut a 90 degree, and I know how to cut a 45 degree. And I know how to connect joints, 90 and 45 only. The problem with the house or this room I'm making is that there are degrees that I've never encountered before, and I don't know how to do them. Which means the following. I go to Home Depot and I buy $200 worth of 2x4s. And I'm going to waste money, energy, and a lot of wood. And I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. Okay. I know how to cut. I just don't know how to cut certain degrees and bring them together in a way that looks good. I certainly know how to make junk, but something that's beautiful, it's very, very difficult. I'm hoping after wasting about 2-3 weeks and wasting $5,000-$6,000 perhaps, I will eventually learn. And then when someone comes and says, I'm building this, how do I make this cut? I can sit them down and write on paper, step by step, what they need to do, because now I understand it. To understand anything first, it's something we've talked about. You have an intellectual understanding. Okay. But to really, really understand it with the core of your being, and I don't know what that means, but it sounds good. You have to make a lot of mistakes. And if your resources are limited, you're going to hate yourself, and other people are going to hate you. And you have to have the stamina to be okay with hating yourself and other people making all these negative judgments about you. So you can go back and do it over and over and over and over again. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the Enneagram, and none of you are, and it's okay because it's no big deal, there is a part to all of us that demands perfection. You want to write a perfect essay. Sure, there comes a point where you give up and you say, whatever, I'm just going to turn this in. It's only like a word, but that's fine. I'll get at least 10 points out of 1,000. But there is a part to us that demands for perfection. And I don't know how it happens. I don't know why it happens, but it's there. Okay? And that's what, to some extent, inspiration does. It removes all the wrinkles from an event that comes your way. And so that part that forces perfection from you, every time you make a mistake, it'll punish you. I remember this man, Plotinus. He's a Greek philosopher who came about 270 years after Plato. And because of him, we have New Platonism, or someone who resurrected Plato. He had these experiences, only like handful, maybe 2, 3, or 4. He could no longer stand the fact that he had a physical body. He hated himself. He didn't eat as much because he didn't want to experience himself going to the bathroom and having things come out of his body. Because every time he went to the bathroom, it would express that he's a human being. And he has limitations, and he's imperfect. And that's something he couldn't bear to see. And it's something, we've talked about in this class plenty of times. In this class, like all the other classes you'll ever take in your life, they're nothing but a series of bumper stickers. They will never do much for you. You will want to, but the truth is you want to have any of these ideas live inside you and then ooze out of you. It takes about 10, 15 years of practice. And in order for you to practice anything, you gotta just like the stuff. You need to some extent, really enjoy building things, to go buy a saw. And it has to be a like that you don't forget, and you just don't go to the saw like once every 10 years or once every 2 weeks or once every month. It doesn't work. It has to be a very intense passion that drives you to the backyard and you turn everything on and you bring your tools and you begin to play with them. And the truth is, you're going to make more mistakes than you're going to get things right for at least the first 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Now, if you're talking about philosophy, which is very abstract, and you're talking about thinking, something that can't be seen, can't be touched, can't be tasted, and you're going to assume that you understand, and then you're going to go out there and apply them. And only you will realize that the bumper stickers you have in your head they have turned you into a jerk. You're a bully, you're dogmatic, you just push people around, you disrespect them, and that in itself has its own nuances, but anyways. Yeah. Oh, thank God. We have a minute. Is there, Andrew?
Oh, yes. Well, it is not.
No, go ahead.
But, whether consciousness is somehow a glitch in our programming.
Pessimism? Oh, that's right. You talked about pessimism. Yeah, it's gotta. Can we do it Thursday? Unless, other questions come up and then. Questions are like food. I love chicken tikka masala, but I had it last night. And if my kids say, let's go have chicken tikka masala, I say no. So just in case we come here on Thursday and you say, can we talk about pessimism? Maybe Thursday my taste buds may reject. So I mean no disrespect to your question. It's a great question, but Anyone else? Yeah.
Did you ever stop needing your father?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever stop needing your father?
No. But let me respond to your question a different way. I need my father to need me now, because it's the only way I can pay him back. Initially, you need your father. You need him to hold your hand. You need him to hold the bike. You need him through his connections to get yourself a job. You need his judgments and discretions about some of the choices you're making about your life. You just need him around. And you need him to oppress you, as he did. I was a free kid from the age like 10 all the way to about, 18. And then they came to America and they bought a car wash. Well, we're from the Middle East, so whatever your parents do, you just follow them. At the age of 18, you want to fly, man. You want to have fun with your friends. But you know what happened to us? My brother and I. We opened shop around 6 in the morning, and we closed shop about 6 at night. Washing cars every single day. And we were new to the business. So when it rained, we called Dad and said, Dad, not a single customer, it's raining. Son, we are immigrants. Even if you make a buck, it's a buck. Well, what do you say to that? Okay, Dad, so you stay there. What we don't really understand is while your father and your mother are oppressing you at the car wash, washing cars, side by side for about 20 years, you become so attached and you grow together in so many different ways. And then you become autonomous. You go to school, you get degrees, now you have your own job, you don't need their money, then you get your own house, now you don't need it, now you can cook, you don't even need your mom to cook for you. Then once in a while your mom says, Amir, I need my garage to be cleaned. I said, thank God now I can be of some use to them. So there are these different stages you go through. You need them for money, but now you need them to have needs for you because you have the power to kind of help them a little bit in various areas of life. من اگر چه پیرم و چه ناتوان تو مرا ز محرم خود مران که گذشته در غمت ای جوان همه روزگار جوانیم. If you want to know why your parents are the way they are, look at them very closely. They are old because they protected your youth. If you want to know why your parents are exhausted, they have to take care of you from the time you wake up to the time to go to sleep. It relieves them no time to do anything. They can't be selfish. And so it's nice for a kid to get to a place of privilege where they can be of some usefulness to their parents. You need that. It's healthy. God damn it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hey, your story about not needing your